Hey, what's up guys? My name is Chano. Welcome back to my Game Engine series. So last time we added GLM and talked about maths libraries in general for game engines. Make sure you check out that video if you haven't already. And today we're going to be doing some IMGUI adjustments, some fixes, some new features that we'll actually add to that. And our implementation of IMGUI, the way that we've kind of integrated it into Hazel, will change for the better. And this is I think the last major setup that I kind of want to do before we actually start working on the renderer. So that's the direction where we're taking Hazel. I just want to make sure that IMGUI is ready to go for all of that because it's really useful to have a good implementation of that because that'll help us a lot when we actually start doing the renderer, and we can tie in various things to IMGUI as well as have custom controls that will represent data that's coming in from the renderer and all that stuff. So it's really important stuff, and I really can't wait to get all these exciting new kind of features of IMGUI into Hazel. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone who helps support the series on patreon.com/thecherno. Huge thank you to everyone there because this series just would not be here without you guys. So thank you so much. For supporting, you get certain rewards such as access to Hazel's development branch, which is where I've actually already done all of this stuff and much, much more. In fact, the renderer is basically written in that branch. I mean, it's like all of the low-level systems, all of that stuff. There's a render command queue. There's various kind of rendering technologies already implemented in that branch. So definitely check that out, help support the series, and get access to stuff like that. Obviously, stuff like the IMGUI stuff that we're going to do today has been there for over a month, I think. So if you kind of want to go ahead and you want to just not just see these videos, but actually get the source code as it's being developed for Hazel, then definitely check that out. And you also get videos around a week early usually. So that's also another kind of benefit that you get for helping to support this series. All right, anyway, what are we doing today? So the way that we've integrated IMGUI at the moment was, and I talked a lot about this in the IMGUI episode, maybe watch that again, just so that you get kind of an idea, because, this is software engineering. We change direction, we change our minds quite often. As I said, it's not like I have a game engine ready to go on GitHub and now suddenly I've decided to make a series of every step that no. We're developing this together as we go along. That's why I made that video with the GitHub issues and all that stuff, and how to kind of submit pull requests, which I haven't even looked at in weeks, by the way. I really need to get back on that. But anyway, because of all that, this is a series being developed as we go along, which means that I might wake up one morning and be like, you know what, that thing that we did a few weeks ago, that's rubbish, let's scrap it. And this isn't really one of the cases. This, in a way, maybe you might see that it is, because we are kind of changing our minds a little bit on that. But ultimately, I'm glad that we had that initial implementation of IMGUI because that kind of allowed me to show you a way that we might want to actually implement it ourselves. But because of these kind of new features that I'll talk about in a minute to do with IMGUI, I think it's just a lot easier for us to just kind of do it a slightly different way, which is going to be more kind of to do with less divergence from their code, because what we ended up doing, let's just jump across and take a look, and I'll give you guys a bit of a refresher. So in IMGUI layer, what we ended up doing was a lot of the stuff that we did here was inspired, right? We kind of hooked it up with Hazel events. All of this stuff was kind of inspired by what IMGUI actually did. So this, this file, IMGUI OpenGL renderer.h, which we kind of, implemented, this is basically, one of their own files, right? And what we've kind of done is, instead of kind of use the GLFW implementation of IMGUI, so if we actually have a look at IMGUI, let me just collapse Hazel. If we have a look at IMGUI, I think if we actually go to, the thing's probably not included here, but if we actually go here and go to examples, GLFW, which is here, OpenGL3, which is actually implemented here for some reason. Where is it? GLFW. So we have OpenGL3, there's GLFW, right? So all of this stuff, right? This kind of stuff, we kind of took from this file and actually included into our own IMGUI layer, right? Via event dispatching, essentially. So mouse press, we did this kind of stuff. Now that's great, but the problem is this is becoming more and more complicated. IMGUI is growing. For example, the features, let's actually dial this back a little bit and talk about the features that we're going to be, why we're doing this IMGUI thing and what we're actually going to gain from that. So IMGUI lately has kind of focused on two important, very important, in my opinion, kind of things to actually add to IMGUI, and that is docking and also something called viewports. So docking is just being able to dock windows, right? Like if we have a look at Visual Studio, we can rip off tabs and dock them into like any window we want. Like here, for example, we can create this. If we have Team Explorer here, we can like just dock this here or grab that tab individually and like dock it up here. And we have this whole docking thing that we can do, right? IMGUI has actually added that to IMGUI so that you can actually organize your kind of window as like a dock space. And then in there, you can have multiple tabs. You can dock them however you like. That's really important because one of the things that I want to do for Hazel is have a level editor. And I want that to be kind of built into the runtime because we don't really have the resources to build a full application stack and everything like that. And this is going to make everything so much easier. And to tie into that as well, viewports is something that they've made, which basically enables you to grab a window from IMGUI and drag it outside of your primary kind of application window. And it'll actually kind of just on the fly create a new window, new rendering context and everything, and it'll act kind of like that window. And we'll see that at the end of today. We'll see all of that kind of working. This is probably going to be a long episode. Anyway, those two features, in my opinion, like really help make IMGUI very viable for we don't need any other like UI kind of framework like WPF, WinForms, Qt, whatever. We don't need any of that because we can just use IMGUI, and these two features make it so much better. So I'm really excited about that. But anyway, because we have those features and they're fairly advanced features, especially like being able to create windows on the fly and all of that stuff, I don't want to implement all of that. That's not what the series is about, right? I don't want to have to implement that and maintain it because the docking branch of IMGUI, which is where all this stuff is, it hasn't been merged into master yet. It's still kind of in development. They might change things as they go along. So what I want to do is just use their implementation, like their IMGUI GLFW implementation, their OpenGL renderer, all of that stuff, like verbatim, like kind of as it is, without any changes, no divergence at all, just include it in Hazel and run it. That way, we can easily merge any changes they make, and going forward, this isn't going to be about, oh no, IMGUI's got an update, let's spend a day like maintaining that and updating all of our code to do that. No, it'll just be like kind of just, drag and drop kind of, and it works. So that's what I really want to do. And that's what we're going to kind of do today, okay? It's quite a large little project. There's a bunch of changes that we actually have to make, especially in IMGUI layer. I actually did this, I think, yesterday or the day before, just in a different kind of, I cloned the repository and did it again, kind of myself. So we'll kind of take a look at the diff between that. I haven't done anything. I know you guys like live coding. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at the diff because I've already done this work. I had to do it ahead of time. Otherwise it would have just taken too long in this video, but we'll have a look at the diff and we'll kind of merge it in line by line and actually have it, we'll see what it will look like. So I will be copying and pasting code, but this kind of, where I'm at right now, the project I have open just does not have any of these changes. We'll pull them in manually. So let's take a look at this and yeah, we'll see how we go. Okay, so this is all the kind of, this is a repository with absolutely nothing. If we just launch this right now so that you guys see where we're at once it compiles. Okay, you'll see we have our kind of standard IMGUI thing. We can drag this around. Obviously, if we go outside, you can see the window does not go outside or anything. So this is in fact the kind of base implementation that we had. So the first thing I want to do is actually take a look at GitHub. So what I have here in my fork of IMGUI, apart from just master being, which is the branch that we're currently on, there's also this docking branch, right? Now this exists in the actual IMGUI repository, right? Docking, here it is. And this is actually being worked on, like 2 days ago was the last commit. This is actually being actively worked on, right? So what I did is I added my premake file to, like 15 days ago, you can see I added that premake file here as well. It's pretty much the same, it's just I had to also add the premake file to the docking branch because we're actually going to switch from using master to docking. So the first thing we need to do then is actually open up a command prompt, and we're going to go and switch that. We have IMGUI as a Git submodule, but currently it's on master. In fact, if we kind of go to it, so Hazel vendor IMGUI, if we do a status, you'll see that we're on master, right, inside IMGUI, and it's up to date with origin master, whatever. We're on the master branch. We need to switch to the docking branch. So the way we do that is very easy for a submodule. We just check out the docking branch, right, and then we have to go up a directory. And if we do a status, if we do a status, you'll see we have IMGUI with new commits on tracked content. So what we'll do is we'll just commit, we'll just add that IMGUI thing into our into Git, right? So now what will actually happen is the fact that we've switched branch to docking, that'll be now tracked. And so in that case, we've basically done that. So to summarize, to switch a Git submodule to a different commit or to a different branch, what you have to do is actually go into that directory, do a Git checkout, and then commit that directory, right? Okay, cool. I don't think IMGUI even needs to be in version control, the .ini file. But anyway, there's a bunch of things that we'll probably have a maintenance episode soon, because I think that some things are just not right in the repository. Anyway, now that we've done that, and we've switched that branch to docking, that should be ready to go, right? So we actually have access to all of that. So now what we need to do is switch all of our stuff to actually work with that docking branch. Now here's the thing. We need 2 new files. Right? If I open up Hazel and I go sandbox, see, vendor, for example, I think is ignored because of bin. Anyway, we won't talk about that now. So Hazel, vendor, IMGUI, this is now on the docking branch, right? So this has, inside examples, we have, that OpenGL3 file, I think, that we now need to compile. And also, what was the other one? The GLFW one, right? These 2 files actually need to now be compiled. What I could do is I could just add them to Premake and have them be compiled like that, but I'm actually not going to do that. I'm actually going to make a file inside Hazel that just includes them and compiles them. And I'm going to call that file, I'll make sure that I'm in show all files mode. I'm going to create that file inside IMGUI. I'll make a new item. It'll be a CPP file. I'll call it imgui build.cpp. Okay, and then over here, I'm actually going to include all of the files that I need to actually build from IMGUI. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is I'll include the PCH file, and then I'm going to actually include all of our files that we want to compile. So from IMGUI, which is examples, we have the GLFW one, so the CPP file, not the H file, right? And then also the OpenGL one. So examples, IMGUI, OpenGL3.cpp. Okay, so we've got like a little bit of a Unity build here. Now the thing is, this OpenGL3 file needs some kind of OpenGL header file, so like a loader as they call it. We're using Glad, so what I'm going to do is just define that before we include it. So define that we're using Glad. Okay, so now if we hit Control F7 to compile this, we should basically get all of our symbols compiling here. And you can see we do. Okay, there we go. One succeeded. Yeah, we have CRT secure no warnings, which should be defined in our actual build file anyway. But the point is, there we go, succeeded, right? So this is now contains all of the symbols that we need from those 2 files. We're just compiling them manually so that we don't have to actually check them into IMGUI, because again, there's something that I want Hazel to actually control. So there we go. IMGUI is now compiling. We have all of the additional stuff that we need for docking and for the viewports things. So this is part of the docking branch now. Now we can actually get rid of IMGUI layer basically, or at least change it so that it's not like what we have. So if I open up the changes that I've actually made to IMGUI layer, the first thing I did was I got rid of a lot of these things, right? We don't need any of these events. So let's go over here and just delete all of these events, right? Gone. And we'll actually delete on event. On update doesn't really need to exist. We're going to replace it with something called on IMGUI render. The other thing that I really don't like here, I don't know how I wrote this code, but obviously these are overriding virtual functions. So I like to mark them as virtual, which is optional. It's a stylistic choice, but more importantly, they really should be marked as override, just to make it clear that they're actually virtual functions that we're overriding. We're going to introduce a new function called on IMGUI render, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But for now, that's all we need. So the CPP file, what has changed? So we're including this stuff instead of that OpenGL renderer. So let's go ahead and just bump in those includes. We don't need this OpenGL renderer file at all. So inside platform OpenGL, we have IMGUI OpenGL renderer. This was basically a copy of this file, right? The OpenGL3 file. So we no longer need this. So I'm going to go over here and just delete them. Make sure you delete them, of course, from disk. And now they're gone. Okay, so we have nothing inside that platform OpenGL folder. So that's the first step. Then what we have to do is, well, in this case, I mean, I've pretty much copied, what I've done is I've pretty much copied what IMGUI had inside, I think, OpenGL3, maybe. They had like a little bit of a docking example. I think it was this main file even, maybe, that just had like, you know, a bunch of stuff that they actually did. So basically what I did was I copied that. And put it over here. So into our IMGUI kind of on attached. So I'll grab all of this code that I've got here And that's basically what's happening with the onAttach function. This stuff with the key map doesn't need to be done because that is now going to be done inside this glfw file, right? Which is over here. So you can see, let's find that. Yeah, there we go. There's the key map stuff. So we don't need to worry about that at all. That's now kind of just part of IMGUI's actual code that they've written, which is great. While I'm in the CPP file for IMGUI layer, I'll just get rid of all this stuff that we have. Okay, and then so onto onAttach, I'll just paste in the code that I've copied. Okay, done. Now on detach, I'm not sure if okay, so we just want to do basically shut down stuff and destroy context on detach. And then inside, okay, and then the other thing that I've done is I've added two functions called begin and end, right? Void begin, void end. So we'll just add those. And what that's going to do, and the reason I've done that is because I want layers to actually be able to do their own IMGUI rendering, right? All I want them to do is be able to write something like IMGUI begin, IMGUI end, so that they can actually like begin a new window and then just render a control and all of that stuff. And that's also where that IMGUI render comes in. So because we want to enclose like layers in that kind of functionality where they can just easily render a window, we need to actually begin window rendering and end window rendering. And by begin and end window rendering, I mean begin and end IMGUI rendering. So if we look at the code that's actually in begin and end, so let's just, I wish we could just look at one of these files, but anyway, because there's a lot of stuff that's changed here. I think, it doesn't matter, we'll just copy this. So inside begin, we just have this stuff, right? Which basically just says begin a new frame. So we'll just write void IMGUI layer begin, whoops, begin. This is the stuff that goes in there. So this is basically, it used to be an onUpdate and show demo window, but what we're actually doing is this part we want to be controlled by layers themselves, right? So for example, the game layer or whatever we have inside Sandbox, that should be able to be like, hey, I want to show a window. So in order for this to actually be written, and that's the only code that is required to be written by our client, we need to have this in begin and this in end so that we can put all of our stuff in between. And that's where that onIMGUI render function actually comes in. So you'll see this in practice in just a minute. We actually don't need anything in onUpdate, so I'll get rid of that. In fact, we don't need an onUpdate function, so we'll get rid of that as well. Okay, so inside here, we will have our end function for IMGUI. And the end function has a few more things, so we'll grab it. And more importantly, it's actually got something, I think that was all of it. Yeah, it's actually got something from the docking branch, which is this whole viewports enable thing, and you can see it's got some glfw stuff that runs. Now, clearly this is kind of specific to OpenGL, first of all, because we're doing OpenGL in it, and also glfw, but that's fine. We'll probably end up having a separate IMGUI layer for each platform, because you can see that's what IMGUI does, right? They have an example for OpenGL, they have an example for Vulkan, they have an example for DirectX versions, right? They've got all of that stuff. We're just going to use their code for that, because IMGUI is so kind of, it needs to be, I don't want to abstract it out into its own thing. They should just be able to control the code. That way we don't have to do any work, which is of course the preferred result, because then we'll never have any issues. Everything will have no divergence at all from their code. Everything will just be theirs, which is perfect. Okay, cool. So anyway, that's pretty much all we have to do. I will add that on IMGUI render thing, but I have to add that to layer, okay? So we're adding something new, which is gonna be virtual void on IMGUI render, okay? On IMGUI draw would be another appropriate name. But anyway, I'll take this, I'll put this into here as an override. And what this will actually do, or what we're allowed to do with this function, is do any kind of IMGUI rendering, right? So in other words, for this case, let's just say we wanted to draw that demo window. We can just do IMGUI show demo window, right? And we'll make a little static bool here, static bool show equals true, okay? And we'll pass that in. So this is all we have to do, right? If we wanted to make a new window, we can just do IMGUI begin, IMGUI end, blah, 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 do like, we'll actually demonstrate this in a minute. But basically, we don't need to do any kind of like new frame, none of that stuff, because this will sit in between begin and end. and can be, as you can see, written by any layer. So that's pretty cool. And we'll see this in action in just a minute. Okay, cool. So that's that. I think what else do we have to do? So the other big changes that I made, I guess, were to application, where I actually added the ImGUI layer as an actual, like, explicit layer. So this is now no longer something that I want the game to be able to control. So inside Sandbox app, we manually added ImGUI layer. No, I don't want that anymore. ImGUI layers will be automatically added by Hazel's runtime. Perhaps in certain configurations like distribution, you might not want to use ImGUI if you've chosen to only use ImGUI for debug purposes. So we will have some kind of flag maybe that just strips ImGUI completely. But I see ImGUI as being something that is quite intricate to it's quite intrinsic to Hazel. It will just be part of Hazel. And that's that. You don't have to render anything with it if you don't want to, obviously, but it will just be Hazel's central UI that Hazel provides. So because of that, I'm going to centralize it. So inside application, I'm going to make a unique pointer, which is going to be ImGUI layer. That's going to be our ImGUI layer. We're going to have to include that probably, although it's not going red. I'll include it anyway. So include Hazel /ImGUI layer. Over here, we'll make it. So we'll say ImGUI layer equals std make unique, just like that. And then what we'll actually do is render it. So over here, we'll do ImGUI begin. Then we have to go through, I'll do end as well since I'm here. But then we have to go through all of the layers and actually call on ImGUI render. So you can see that this is going to sit in between begin and end. Okay. Now, when we do actually write the renderer, like I've already done in the Hazel development branch, which is available for patrons, we'll have to actually do this entire code on the render thread. So Hazel will have like a multi-threaded kind of architecture where we have an update thread, which is kind of just the application thread, and also a render thread, which we have a render queue where we submit every kind of render command to. So this whole chunk will actually be executed on that render thread eventually. Just so that you know, like on update, for example, will not, and on update is where you can submit things for rendering, but this whole thing will actually be on the renderer because we have raw render calls like right in there. So that is that. But there we have this kind of on ImGUI render. So this should just show, if we run this right now, hopefully it should just show our kind of demo window. So let's just build this. I don't know if I've forgotten anything. I guess we'll see pretty quickly. But if I just build this, hopefully it will build. You can see it has. So let's just hit F5 and see what happens. Okay, so we have abort has been called. If we retry this, okay, well, actually, I just realized I forgot to add this to the layer stack. So that's pretty annoying. But I think that's it out of things that I forgot to do. Let me just quickly check the Sandbox app. We don't have any ImGUI code in here, do we? No? Okay, good. The other thing that I want to quickly check out is this diff. So application.cpp, what did I do here? I actually never did add it to the layer stack. That's interesting. And that's probably wrong as well. So what this should actually do, and actually I'm not even sure why we get that error then, but what this definitely should do is we should be adding it to the layer stack because we want obviously on detach. And how did that even work then if we never add it to the layer stack? That's very suspicious. Anyway, so we'll do push overlay. Oh, and actually that brings me to this point. We actually can't have this as a unique pointer. I'm not even sure how that code that I wrote yesterday worked at all. But anyway, we can't have this as this shouldn't be a unique pointer at all now that I'm actually looking at this, because obviously ownership is transferred to the layer stack. So ImGUI layer is now something that's part of our layer stack, which means that layer stack determines when it gets created and deleted. So this has to be a raw pointer. There we go. So let's hit F5. That's very weird though, that code that I wrote yesterday, because it definitely worked. I definitely tested it, but I'm not sure how. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so we have, well, this is great. Oh, and this reminds me as well of something that we have a little bit of an issue with the actual layer stack. Someone pointed this out. There was a bug. We keep track of the layer insert iterator, which isn't the best thing to do, because if the whole collection gets moved in memory, this has to be invalidated and redone. So what a better way of doing this is actually to have a layer kind of insert index, right? Which can just be like an unsigned int, right? We can set this to 0 to begin with. And then what happens is whenever we have to do this, we can just basically set layer insert. We can use this kind of layer insert index plus we can do m layers plus the index. So that way it's always from begin, right? So begin plus the index is what I'm trying to say. Just like that, right? We don't need to do this anymore. We also don't need to do this anymore, right? So basically we're inserting this, like layers are always going to be pushed at begin plus that index. And then all we have to do is, obviously since we've just inserted a layer, that layer insert index gets incremented. And then here, that layer insert index gets decremented, right? So whenever we pop a layer, we reduce that. Whenever we add a layer, we increase that. So for example, if we push a layer, suddenly this is now 1. So we push the next layer at position 1, right? Whereas if we push an overlay, that gets pushed into like position 2 or whatever, this is still 1. So when we push another layer, it'll get pushed in before that overlay, right? So that basically just keeps a little separation there, but we don't need to actually use an iterator for that, just an index, and that'll be a lot better because if we move or whatever, if we resize the vector and the iterator kind of gets invalidated, we don't need to update it. So if we hit F5 now, maybe this will work. Okay, and look at that. It's already actually spawned with the window outside, but you can see what we can do now is we can grab this IMGUI demo window and just drag it like outside of this. Like how cool is this, right? We can just have that IMGUI window outside and then we can drag it back in, everything's fine. If we open like another window, so if I go to like examples, you know, log, for example, I can just drag that outside, right? And there we go. We have multiple IMGUI windows just floating around in space, which is really, really cool. Now, the dock space is also, or just docking is another really cool thing. So if I go example dock space, right, this whole window now is a dock space where I can just like drag this in here, you know, put my log down here, and you can see it's just like a normal application. It's kind of like, let's open something else like console. You know, this kind of becomes like a little, and I'll dock this maybe side by side. This becomes like a little, almost like kind of like Visual Studio or any kind of application that uses docking, right? So that's really, really cool. I really like this. You can see we can totally like make a viewport maybe here, like a viewport window, and that will kind of be our rendering. And we have like a little level editor like set up pretty much immediately. So this is really exciting, something that I really wanted to do. And obviously we can grab these windows and drag them off outside of the window. Like how cool is that, right? We can totally make a really cool application with this now. So that's kind of the major features that I wanted to add. Now, I want to leave you guys with a little bit of a homework assignment. How do we get IMGUI working here, right? So I have obviously my void on IMGUI render, which I can just put in here, right? Just throw in here. And now I theoretically should be able to do IMGUI begin. You know, we'll call this like test. I should be able to type in IMGUI text, and you know, write something like hello world, and then IMGUI end, right? To make my window. Now, obviously we need to include IMGUI, which we actually can't really do at the moment. So let's just include IMGUI/IMGUI.h. That's how I'd like to include it. In order to make this include work, we should actually go back into Hazel and edit the pre-make file so that we inside under sandbox, which is here, in our include directories, we can include Hazel/vendor, right? Which will include all of our vendor stuff. So if I rerun pre-make, generate projects, okay, cannot open vendor IMGUI, that is a shame. Why can't we generate that? Oh, great, more problems. That's just what I wanted. So this actually doesn't have, we must not have pulled. So let's do git pull origin docking, all right? Just to pull the latest code, which would include my pre-make file, which I guess we didn't do. Okay, cool, so now we have premake5.lua. So if we run generate projects, you can see we generate them. I'll reload all. This include should now work. So if I hit Control F7 to build this, you can see it builds fine, right? But if I try and actually run it, so I'll try and actually like compile and link it, not just compile it, you can see I actually get 3 linking errors, right? So this says error unresolved external symbol begin and in text. Somehow they're not linking in. Why is that? So if we take a look at our linking structure roughly, we have ImGUI being built into a static library and then being included into Hazel, which is a DLL. So it looks like those symbols aren't actually being exported by our DLL file, which is Hazel, right? That's a little bit weird. Why is that happening? And that's where you guys come in to fix all of this. So have a think as to why you think this is happening. Again, just to make it really clear and help you guys out a little bit, it's a bit of a hint. We have our static ImGUI library. All of those symbols, of course, it's a static library, so all of those symbols are being included into the DLL file, which is hazel.dll. So then now when my .exe file, which is sandbox, links against Hazel, why are those ImGUI symbols not coming through? I want to know. Leave a comment below, see if you can find a solution. I, of course, already know the solution, by the way, just so that's clear. And there's actually many solutions, but I've already chosen the solution, and that's actually already in the in the Hazel development branch that's available for patrons. Patreon.com/theChurner to support the series, by the way. Huge thank you as always. Anyway, I've already got the solution there, but have a go, see if you can figure it out. This is a really good exercise of just how C++ works as well. So definitely check that out and have a think and leave your solution in the comments below. If for those of you who are right, I'll pin probably the top comment. But also I wanted to say, maybe if you're watching this video and not in like the first hour or whatever, have a think for yourself before you look at the comments and see if you can figure it out. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.